the ANC National Youth Task Team, which is mandated to take the ANC Youth League to Congress, held its first meeting over the weekend, and it received a report from the Outgoing Collective and will also adapt resolutions to chart a new way forward. Let's take a look.
The newly established NYTT has wasted no time in preparing themselves for the mammoth task ahead of them. The 34-member team held its first official meeting this weekend. Apart from receiving a diagnostic report from their predecessors, they also met with top ANC leaders.
We started with the induction by Comrade Ongama Mtimka, and then we continued with discussions. We had the president of the ANC talking to us, giving a political input and giving his advice on what needs to be done going forward in saving the ANC Youth League and returning the ANC Youth League back to its members.
The Young Communist League of South Africa has pledged support for the structure, but cautions against factionalism filtering down from the mother body.
We wish to have a youth league that is led by its rightful owners, and then we see the revival, because if one body part is limping or having challenges, it affects the entire progressive youth formations. And in this case, obviously, we'll play our support, we'll work very close to the appointed leadership, and indeed, we just hope that they are not going to allow to be drawn into factional battles of the Congress movement that we've already seen.
A number of issues were discussed at the weekend-long meeting, including the disbandment of ANC Youth League structures in provinces and regions. Natasha Piri, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, the task team says that its top priority will be to give young people a credible voice in the governing party again, and that it will not promote ANC factional battles. Let's get some analysis of these developments within the ruling ANC. We're joined now by political analyst Ongama Mtimka. Thanks so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live once more.
Good morning, Sakina. Thank you for having me.
Ongama, firstly, what are your overall views on the on the announcement of the National Youth Task Team?
I feel that this time the ANC Youth League has been given a fair chance to regroup and be able to build going forward. Whether or not they take that chance is something that is entirely up to them, as well as, in fact, the enablement that they receive from the mother body. We know that the elder or the old guard in the ANC hardly want to see an independent youth league. They've always, at least in the recent past, enjoyed having the youth league as a weapon in their own schemes. So I hope that this new leadership and their rhetoric is actually affirming to this, that they're going to be able to avoid the schemes of the old guard and carve a new path for themselves and young people. And if they want to reclaim being an alternative platform in which youth politics is represented in the country, they're going to have to work harder, because the EFF has sort of played that role for the longest period in the past period of a lull within the ANC Youth League.
So if we look at what has been said by the newly appointed ANC Youth League convener, Ongama Mtimka, she says, and I quote, "The ANC Youth League will not be used as a pocket knife for factional battles within the party." Is that not a tacit admission that the Youth League is part and parcel of these factional battles within the ANC, and that they have in the past been used for this purpose?
It is. They would be naive if they thought it wasn't. What I like about the messaging from Ongama is both the sensitivity to that kind of potential to be co-opted into the schemes of the old guard, as well as her perceived closeness to President Cyril Ramaphosa. I think that the fact that she's sensitive to both of those things creates a avenue for her to be able to manage the process, along with Joy, obviously, in ways that are going to try and be objective. And I think as a leader, she's got the experience based on her time leading the ANC. In fact, playing an instrumental role as a spokesperson of the caucus of the ANC in Parliament, as well as now at the presidency. I think that she's got the experience, both of them, as well as everybody else who has been brought in, even though you can assume, Sakina, that some of them are, in fact, heavily entrenched in the politics of succession in the ANC. I saw one person, for example, whom I know has been, long been being positioned locally to be part of the grouping close to Andile Lisa. And unfortunately, I couldn't get hold of him. I wanted to find out whether they share the sentiment that is being shared at a national level, that they must disassociate themselves from mother body politics to the extent possible as far as succession issues are concerned, and drive young people's agenda.
But how difficult is that going to be, given that many would argue that the ANC has not had an effective youth league since the disbandment of the Malema League when he was president? Would you agree with that view?
So it's been dead since then. In fact, I think that it is precisely the scheming of the old guard that resulted in a more preferred candidate who would have, continued the path that they had started along with Julius Malema, minus perhaps the robustness. It would have been Ronald Lamola was a natural choice, but obviously schemed out of it through the machinations of President Zuma and company. And as a result of that, the Youth League was rendered ineffective. What is crucial for them to get back on a path of consolidation and rebuilding is a program that focuses on young people's issues. And if I read what is quoted as having been said by Ongama, as well as her opinion piece around Charlotte Maxeke's memorial, I see that these are people who have really taken time to define their politics, and the issues that they raise are the right issues. They highlight GBV, they highlight our youth unemployment. I saw among some of the things also the need to have a proper healthcare, and there's one other issue which I thought that the proliferation of drugs in townships, among other issues. I'm not saying that youth issues should only be those things, but those are crucial. And for me, what I'm seeing is that these leaders are aware both of the issues of structure, but also of their own agency. The ANC also need to realize, Sakina, that the Youth League and this process that they are involved in now may be fertile soil for them to sow the seeds for a future rebirth and renewal of the party. And that's their only hope, by the way, because in whichever way you look at the prospects of the ANC in the short to medium term, the picture is bleak. So they need to take this process seriously and give young people the space to build an organization for themselves, because the retirees are soon going to be out of the socioeconomic life in public, and these young people that are now coming in will have to answer as to how did they allow the ANC to fail during their own time. So they must be given space to build at the level of the Youth League as they are, because that may be a harbinger for the renewal of the ANC. Unfortunately, that's not in the immediate term, but it's good enough that it is starting now. And come late 2020s, they may have built a good order of leadership that may be able to build afresh for the party.
So if you look at the troubles that set into the ANC Youth League even before Julius Malema's Youth League was disbanded, the leadership of that league was disbanded. And you look at what has happened since. You look at the paralysis that seems to have taken hold of the African National Congress Youth League and where they find themselves now. When it comes to the autonomy of the Youth League and how much of that they would be able to assert, how do you think they're going to go about that, given that this was once, a youth league in the ANC often branded itself and was proud to call itself kingmakers during conferences of the African National Congress? So how do they reclaim that autonomy in any real sense, given that they have literally stumbled from one committee to another and now have to finally go to conference?
Sure. I think they must accept that there's paralysis throughout the country as far as the Youth League is concerned. And I think that the moves aimed at disbanding some of the existing Youth League structures in the rest of the country is important in order to allow for them to rebuild. The other thing that they need to do, Sakina, is to make sure that membership so the autonomy of the membership is crucial. The feeling among members that they are autonomous themselves, never mind the relations of the Youth League with the mother body, which happens at a senior level. And how you guarantee membership autonomy is by making sure that you eliminate the potential for fraudulent membership or manipulation of the membership system in order to fashion conference outcomes, whether those in favor of particular elites. And to do that, they are going to need to bring in a fresh approach to being elected in office in the ANC. More promotion of what is it that they bring to the table, rather than building strategic alliances which sometimes are aimed at undermining the ability of members to vote by themselves. So if they build something which they place at the mercy of the membership base of the Youth League in order to determine outcomes of policy and leaders, they can start again being this fertile soil for seeds of restoring the ANC. If they allow, if they don't embrace, for example, technology, membership cards. I mean, some of these people come from SASCO and other student formations where they are familiar with voting systems that are a lot more secure. And memberships like student membership, for example, which is controlled, So the legacy of those, of their time at universities ought to be improvement of membership management systems in the Youth League. And then also, and focusing a lot more on the program rather than do what the ANC does. I think Julius Malema's mistake, for example, was to take their program and tie it to a particular ANC candidate, and leading to Mangaung, that was Ongama Mtimka, who actually embraced it far late against the so-called second transition rhetoric of the then COSATU, the Lula moment, theorizing, which legitimized Zuma's president. So what they're going to need to do now is to have their program be independent of succession politics in the ANC. And even if they are wanting to use the platform of succession of the ANC as a platform for adoption of their policies, they mustn't tie it to a candidate. Because, I mean, now everybody in the ANC fashions themselves as the ultimate radical, when in fact, when they've been in government, either at provinces or at a national level, and there hasn't been such radicalism. So they need to divorce their ideology and program from a particular candidate of the ANC.
We're out of time, Ongama, but I have to ask you about the role of money in all of this, because we had this problem at the senior level. The Youth League itself has had these problems. You spoke earlier about the scheming around candidates previously. So how important a factor is that going to be?
Unfortunately, Sakina, that has been a factor. And it's been so sad to observe that this starts even among student bodies, where such an influence of money influences, the politics of the student movement, which is why they get punished in the next election. So the question for me was, this is really sounding like good communication from the Youth League and the current leaders. The question is, up until when will they succumb to the trappings of power and money and, turn back on that very clear sense of historic mission, which I'm appreciating from the group.
And given the deep divisions and fissures within the ANC nationally, the task team comes at a time when the party perhaps was never more deeply divided. How do you foresee this being a stumbling block, perhaps, to its performances and what its ideals could be as a youth league?
It's a make or break division, Sakina. That's why I'm saying these leaders ought to regard the ANC as a dead organization and what they are busy doing as a necessary pathway for renewal. That distinction is important, and that reading of the situation is important. If they read the ANC as still yet an organization that is still viable, they are going to sell their futures in this rebuilding exercise, because they're being co-opted by those that want to gain control of the ANC will have a greater short-term reward compared to neglecting what prospects are offered by ANC pathways to power, and then focusing on rebuilding the Youth League, which would have a much longer potential to sort of much better prospects of rebuilding afresh than the ANC, than the mother body. But unfortunately, they might just fail to see the potential in them doing things right, and in fact disregarding the pathways to power in the mother body. Many of them may be tempted to actually align with emerging groups within the mother body, and they will collapse along with the mother body if they do that.
Well, Ongama, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time this morning. And that, of course, political analyst Ongama Mtimka talking to us about the African National Congress Youth League. And we had hoped that we'd speak to Ms. Lauli this morning, the newly appointed convener there, but unfortunately couldn't get that interview this morning. But hopefully, who knows, throughout the week, we might even get her to speak to us here on Morning Live. Right now, though, it is just about 8:30.